Welcome back to the story of my samurai and the way of the warrior. Let's continue. Eddie limped across the road towards the building and rubbed his side. His head throbbed and his back ached. He pulled himself upright and tried to walk in a straight line. He felt his fingers wrap around the shop door latch and closed his eyes momentarily. Taking a slow breath, he leaned forward and into the shop. He coughed as his throat filled unexpectedly with dust. Stumbling around the dimly lit room, he looked around for the warrior, but he'd disappeared. The old-fashioned seat absorbed his tired body as he collapsed into it. Lots of emotion seemed to have followed him inside. Eddie leaned forward and held his head. Why were all these bad things happening? Why were they happening to him? He'd lost his job, his regular credits, and water for the family. What would he do now? And the old man? Who did he think he was, telling Eddie what to do? Eddie didn't need his help. He didn't need anyone's help. He knew he didn't have answers to his questions, not now anyhow. The best thing he could do was distract himself and try and relax a bit. He knew that much. The shop felt more welcoming than the old fella, Eddie thought. It was bigger than it looked from the entrance, and would be a cool space for a small club or apartment. He felt drawn to an area where there was a sweet smoky smell and old photos on the wall. From his low seat he turned and scanned the rest of the large room with its many corners and shelves. Almost fresh flowers decorated one of the tables. Eddie groaned as he lifted himself up and staggered over to it. He picked a soft apple from a basket on the tabletop and took a bite, savoring the rare taste, which refreshed his sick-tasting mouth. Glancing back at the shop entrance, he noticed the warrior bow. The door opened and the elderly man walked inside. He walked past Eddie as if he weren't there and continued into a room at the back of the shop. Eddie wondered if he'd seen him. He called out, "Can you see the warrior guy too?" The man answered from the kitchen, "You may think me a stupid old fool, boy, but I am not yet blind." Eddie smiled to himself, letting his weary eyes rest on the framed wall pictures nearby. Faded black and white photos of Japanese men and women and families together. "Who are these people?" The man approached slowly, then leaned forward and placed a pot of sweet-smelling tea on a small table between two chairs. "Too many questions," he said, filling 2 cups. "Introductions first, boy. Who are you?" The young man introduced himself, then bowed stiffly. "I am Eddie Sato." The man smiled. "Hajimashite. Nice to meet you," he said and bowed. "I am Mr. Takamoto." Eddie wanted the awkwardness to be over and quickly replied, "Yeah, nice to meet you too." The man held his gaze. "You may call me Mr. Takamoto." Eddie stood quietly and looked around the room. Mr. Takamoto ended Eddie's obvious discomfort and moved to the pictures on the wall. He beckoned for Eddie to join him. "You see the man on the right? The handsome one?" "Yeah, with the sword?" said Eddie. "The man on the right is me." "You? No way. Are you surprised? I was not always old and stupid." He paused, nodding. "Once I was young and stupid like you," said Mr. Takamoto. "Next to me is a boy who is about your age." Eddie leaned forward, ignoring the old man's rudeness. "He looks angry." "Yes, he didn't like photos," said Mr. Takamoto. "That boy," he paused, "was your father. The tall man next to him was your father's father. Your grandfather. My best friend." Eddie stood quietly facing the wall. Tears rolled over his cheek. He had no words. "Come and sit down," said Mr. Takamoto. "Just a minute." Eddie wiped his face with his sleeve. "I really should go," he said. "I need to get home to my family." "I wasn't asking, son. Sit. There is no time for tears today." Join us again for episode 11.